Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with a hot take, final hot take of the evening on what's going to happen to these media outlets, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. This is, if you haven't seen it, you could Google it or search for it under YouTube under Van Jones crying. This is Van Jones crying on CNN because Biden, in his view, has been elected. And, CNN called it for Biden. And so he's crying about, this shows that a good person is going to be president. I won't have to explain to my son. And, oh, it's such a wonderful day. Really? What are you going to tell your son when your son finds out that the 46th president of the United States raised a crack addict who banged prostitutes on a regular basis, cheated probably on his wives, I would imagine, and is suspected, at least in one report, of possibly being sexually inappropriate with one of his relatives, and we're still not sure who that is, that he is probably going to be indicted, if not convicted, of some kind of crime involving the Russian energy company and or the Ukraine energy company and or the Chinese energy company he had dealings with. I mean, I think Hunter's in a lot of trouble. And I don't think his father becoming president is going to be a good thing for him. I think that's going to put more pressure on Hunter, and that's not a good thing for somebody who's addicted to crack. And the guy's 50. Smoking crack on a regular basis when you're 50, you know, it's one thing to do it when you're 20, but when you're 50, I said this before, and I'm not saying I want this, but I don't think Hunter can survive his father becoming president. I really don't. I think he needs help. I said in my Joe Biden appeal video that he should get help and that Biden should just concede and go help his son if his son's more important to him. But I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to lose anyway. But CNN, you know, they in my view staged these dramatic moments. Chris Cuomo did something stupid today too, or said something stupid. I forget what. You know, but that's ratings. It's, you know, say something outrageous and dumb and, oh, what did they say? And they all go on YouTube. But it's not going to be enough to sustain a news network, because news networks or even infotainment are sustainable only because of credibility. And I think, you know, CNN has long since run out of that road. Yeah, they have. Every once in a while you see Jeff Daniels come on, or some celebrity who, you know, played a person who had credibility. But, you know, you only can get so much mileage out of a celebrity. Yeah, people tune in, but they're not saying, oh, wow, you know, that actor agrees with me. No, they're just like, oh, Jeff Daniels, I liked him and such. Let's see what he has to say. But it's not like seeing a senator come on and say something, or a congressman or a president. The Democrats don't, you know, at this point, they've just essed the bed on so many different levels. CNN's relentless shilling for them. They're paying for it. They're paying for it. They're paying for it because they take the hit. The congressman doesn't take the hit. They do. And now they're running out of road because they're running out of money. CNN is for sale, is the rumor, by AT&T, who owns it. They own Time Warner. DC Comics is in trouble too. They're scaling back that big time. Get woke, go broke, everybody. So what are you going to do with a CNN? If Trump goes, what are they going to talk about? Who's going to watch it? If Trump leaves, they're done. I mean, they're absolutely done, in my view. They'll have nothing to talk about. Yeah, you could talk about Biden for a few weeks and blame all his problems on Trump, but And when Trump goes, CNN is over. It's over. So I don't know who's going to buy it. I think I just had this discussion with a friend of mine on the phone. I think what will happen is they'll have to sell it and they'll have to rebrand it. And to rebrand it, they'll literally have to fire every person who's on CNN right now. All of them. Gone. They just have to fire everybody. You can't have... Who has credibility left on CNN? And I don't think any of them do. Not enough that they're worth keeping with their high salaries. You'd be better off wiping the slate clean, coming in with a whole new group of people, and just dumping everybody. Everybody's gone, and which is what I think they're heading towards. And at that point, the question is, what will CNN do? Will it be a news network? And if so, what will be the angle of news? Like MSNBC, obviously, is for the left. That, to me, is a smaller audience, but MSNBC has that audience. So if you fight over that audience, you're basically splitting a small piece of the pie. Whereas Fox News has just lost their audience. Now OAN and what's the other one? Newsmax. Their ratings are through the roof, and they're up and coming. So they may replace Fox or supplant Fox, which means Fox may become the moderate station that people watch. So where's that leave CNN? Probably chasing Trump in a different way. I think it's possible that CNN will flip the script and become the positive network for Republicans. Now, they can't call themselves CNN anymore, but they'd have to like change the name a little bit or change the brand or the logo or something. Maybe they could call themselves the Cable Network or something like that. You know, something that would technically be the same name, but it would be, they'd change it just enough so it sounded different. And then they could come out and, you know, rebrand the whole thing as a, maybe a positive sort of patriotic kind of channel. But then you'd be competing against Newsmax, OAN, and Fox to some extent. So you'd have to outright them. So you'd have to go even further right. And that's your choices. Your choices really are, you know, CNN tried to split the middle. They tried to stay centrist. It didn't really work. And now, I mean, it could have worked if they had stuck with, like, their principles, I think, and had a lot of credibility and reported both sides, but they didn't. In the end, they went for the neoliberals. So unless they stay with that dying audience, and it's a small audience, they either have to go further left or further right. Like, they have to go further left than MSNBC. They'd have to be the Antifa network to do that. They'd have to, like, literally have no one on the network over the age of 25, and it would be nothing but critical race theory and BLM guests. And I mean, I don't think you could get enough sponsors for that, and I don't think it would work. I think it would just go right in the toilet, and you know, you'd have to out left Vice News. They would be a competitor too in that arena. But you could easily, I think, go right, because that's a growing audience. Fox is kind of S in the bed. They're losing audience shares, but there's a lot to go around. They have a lot to lose. Something like, I think Tucker was at his peak, like 7 million views, 7 million viewers, and OAN and Newsmax got about 1 million each. I think Fox is probably hovering around 2 or 3 million at this point. That means you've got probably at least 1 million or 2 floating out there. CNN doesn't even get 1 million at this point on most of their shows, so that would be a slight improvement, but you probably need to brand it something different. Maybe you could go neocon, but I doubt there's enough people who are that gung-ho for war. Maybe you could do the whole normal, quote-unquote, Republican. So in other words, like you could try to appeal to the, you know, the right that is basically represented by a bunch of neocons, but they don't have that reputation, like Kasich you know, and Mitt Romney and those guys. You could be more like centrist Republicans. I think that'd be too wishy-washy. I think what you would have to go is really right, like just short of alt-right. You couldn't go alt-right. That would be too much. But you'd go maybe just short of it, which means you'd have to go right of Newsmax and OAN. Be a tough call. But it would definitely get a completely different lineup of people. People who would, I mean, you'd basically have to steal all the talent from Blaze TV, maybe. And they're only kind of more right than, I mean, not really. I mean, I don't think they're all that right-wing on Blaze, but, you know, you might be able to steal enough talent here and there to make it work. Maybe you get a Michael Savage or Mike, or was it Michael Levin? Is it Michael Levin or Mike? I don't know what. There's Savage and there's Levin. Like those two guys, they're pretty conservative. I don't know if they go for it. You know, with the new rebranding, maybe you'd get all new guys and just cut your overhead to the bare bone and see what happens. But anything's better than this. I mean, Van Jones crying over an election. Really? Really? I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second. I think it's total newstainment that we don't need, and that really isn't helping us decipher what this is all about. It's asking you to be emotional like him. What we need in a news program, we need information, and that's part of the problem. It's easy to do what I do, talk about the news, because there's not a lot of information I'm talking about in this video, right? I'm just speculating about what will happen to these guys post-election. This is all just my opinion. That's easy. It's easy. As long as you can talk like me, or someone like me, you're fine. You just babble on. But that's not what you want in news. You want information. You want meat. Not just a bunch of, you know, blather. And I don't see it from these guys in their current form. It's a lot of like posturing. This is posturing. A lot of what Cuomo does, I think, is posturing. You know, it's not like, hey, everybody, we just found out, like Jack Posobiec did on Twitter last night. I mean, he was watching the Zoom meeting about Wisconsin and what was happening live, basically, and tweeting about it. That is the kind of news CNN would need to break, and they just don't anymore, because they didn't even care about that. They want that news to die. They've picked a partisan choice, and that's what's strangling them. So they need to abandon that. They need to completely abandon it and go after everybody and build up a credibility and become a force within themselves that, you know, doesn't make the news, doesn't comment on the news, but reports the news and becomes credible, that people trust it. When you're screaming that we're the most trusted name in news, you know, it doesn't work just because you say it. You have to actually be the most trusted name in news for people to believe it. And when you see here the headline, Joseph R. Biden elected 46th president, that's simply not true. It's not true. You're not elected president. He's a projected winner at this point. He's a projected winner. And there's nothing wrong with, I mean, you could easily change that chyron to Joe Biden, projected winner, projected 46th president, and that would be true. And that would be almost as effective. But look, they've got it twice. They're so desperate to elect him. Joseph R. Biden, Jr., elected 46th president. Joe Biden, elected president. Check. Yes. Little presidential seal, everything. Look at it. It's ridiculous. Shows you how weak their position is. They're trying to force Biden on you instead of just telling you what happened. You know, Biden's won enough. We're projecting Biden has won enough states to become president, but hasn't become president yet. But they're not interested in nuance. And that's why I think you're going to see big changes at CNN relatively soon.